Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the United Kingdom, a country often described as a land of opportunity. But today we're asking, opportunity for whom? Because whilst hard-working Brits are grappling with a cost of living crisis, and in fact just this week, every single bill that British citizens have to pay has gone up. From energy to water to road tax to council tax to your phone bill to broadband, you name it, it's gone up. So we've got all of that here for hard-working British taxpayers and law-abiding citizens. Meanwhile, our immigration system is facing significant challenges. From managing legal migration to addressing illegal crossings, it's clear that the system is failing. Hello, I'm Christys, and this is GBN Originals. Look, let's just start with the numbers, shall we? Last year, net migration hit 728,000 in 1 year, ending June 2024. That means 1.2 million people entered the UK and around 500,000 left. Let's just put that into perspective, shall we? That's more than half the population of Birmingham, which is our second largest city, arriving in just 1 year. While immigration can bring economic and cultural benefits, such high levels also raise important questions about infrastructure, housing and social cohesion. And unfortunately, for people talking about the economic benefits, GDP per capita is going down. What does that mean? We're all getting poorer. So whilst we're seeing 1.2 million new arrivals in the space of a year from all corners of the world, we are all getting poorer, which means what's the point of it all, really? Also, as for some of those aforementioned cultural benefits, okay, fair enough. We have wonderful food in this country now, and there are things to be said for a rich, diverse tapestry of human existence. But we also have to acknowledge that there have been massive problems as well. Things like foreign wars and foreign conflicts spilling out onto the streets of Britain, whether that's in Gaza, whether that's in Sudan, whether that's in Eritrea. We've also had violent clashes between members of the Pakistani community and members of the Indian Hindu community in places like Leicester and Birmingham. There's also an increase in crime, especially sexual crime, and much of that, unfortunately, is attributed to foreign nationals living in Britain. Unfortunately, our government's response has been inconsistent, marked by policies that often fail to address the root causes of these very serious issues. Today, we're going to examine a case that highlights some of the challenges within our immigration system, a case involving a Ghanaian lady who has managed to avoid deportation for nearly 4 decades. Well, this individual was convicted of multiple crimes, including drug offences and fraud under 15 different identities. That's here in Britain, by the way. She's repeatedly claimed she would face persecution in Ghana due to accusations of witchcraft, claims that have been totally dismissed by UK tribunals as lacking any credibility. Despite her criminal record and rejected asylum claims, she's remained in the UK for 40 years due to legal loopholes and the appeals process. Whilst her case might seem like an extreme example, I would argue it's not that extreme. We've seen a man who couldn't be deported because his son didn't like foreign chicken nuggets. We've seen a lady who couldn't be deported back to Nigeria because she mysteriously joined a banned Nigerian terrorist organisation whilst here in Britain, which would mean that she could face persecution back home. These cases are, frankly, endless. And it underscores broader issues now with the asylum system and with our immigration system.
Using the internet without a VPN, a virtual private network, is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. This video's sponsor is Private Internet Access. They are the VPN to help keep you safe. Click the link in the description below to find out why over 30 million people have downloaded PIA to protect themselves online. A virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and helps keep your data private. When you're browsing the internet at home, you give up a large amount of data to businesses, to shops, and indeed to social media giants too. Hackers have the ability to steal your personal data with ease, including sensitive information such as passwords, keystrokes, and even your personal photos. Private Internet Access helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection to keep your data out of the hands of cyber criminals. And it's not just hackers either to be concerned about. Information can be censored too. When Canada passed their C-18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news and content you love. Private internet access is available for Windows users, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one PIA subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices. And we've got a huge GB News discount for you too. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get a massive 83% off PIA. That's under £2 a month, the price of a coffee, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free on top. Also, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee too. Visit piavpn.com/GB News to start protecting yourself digitally today.
These lengthy legal battles and human rights laws are delaying deportations for years. At the same time, we must remember that such cases are not representative of all migrants or asylum seekers, but there does appear to be an ever-increasing number of them. Another pressing issue is obviously the huge rise in small boat crossings in the English Channel. Thousands arrive illegally each year seeking asylum. We are up about 37% on last year. The Home Office has admitted losing track of more than 17,000 asylum seekers whose claims have been discontinued. Around 1/3 of them remain unaccounted for. This raises huge concerns about oversight and all of our safety. Public safety. You've introduced people into a country, or they've introduced themselves really, haven't they? And then they've gone missing. They therefore have nothing to lose. They can't really go and get a proper job because they're not supposed to be here. So what line of work do you think they work in? And if they feel cornered, and if they feel as though, the laws of the land might catch up with them, why would they bother abiding by them? However, it's important to note that not all missing asylum seekers necessarily pose a danger. Many might simply be living undocumented lives, although I am at pains to stress that that is still highly illegal and should not really be happening. Let's take the case of Abdul Azidi, a convicted sex offender who was later granted asylum after claiming religious conversion. He claimed that he was now a Christian and he could not be returned to his home country because he would face religious persecution. His case showed unbelievable flaws in asylum claims, and it was absolutely bonkers, to be perfectly honest with you. What happened was that he was a failed asylum seeker. He said he'd converted to Christianity. He then managed to find a religious leader who said that he had indeed converted to Christianity, and our asylum system bought that. He then doused a woman and a child with acid in Clapham before eventually going on the run and throwing himself off a bridge to his death in the River Thames. Why was that allowed to happen in this country? He was one of many people at the time that it emerged were fake Christians. How do we know that? He did have a Muslim funeral service. Now, let's talk about the economy, shall we? So, they say that immigration contributes to overall GDP growth. That's certainly been the line that's been rammed down our throats for decades. However, GDP per capita, which is what we should all care about because this means how rich or poor we are, fell by 0.7% last year, despite near record levels of mass immigration. Well, this is obviously due to population growth, isn't it? Well, how is that population growing? It's growing through mass immigration. It's also growing through the rate at which certain demographics of people have children compared to white Brits. In many cases, people of a different ethnicity and from different cultures, like for example Somalia, have on average something like 7 to 8 children, whereas white Brits do not have that amount of people. So therefore, the population is growing rapidly as a direct result of immigration, but then also first and second generation immigration. Some employers rely heavily on migrant labour instead of investing in British workers or adopting new technologies. This leads to stagnant wages and lower productivity, a concern for many working class communities, which is why so many working class communities in Britain voted for Brexit. They didn't want to see cheap European labour flood the market and drive down their wages. Of course, they also didn't want to see, as a result of Brexit, our politicians decide that the solution to that was to then import more people from parts of India, the Middle East and Africa to do exactly the same as what we were doing with Europe, but on steroids, and in a way that you might argue actually changes Britain's culture even more severely. At the same time, asylum seekers are often housed in hotels, temporary accommodation in deprived areas, already struggling with economic hardship. This can create tensions with communities, as we saw last year with protests in Knowsley, where the allegation was that a man living at the local asylum seeker hotel had been videoing schoolgirls outside the school gate and harassing them. A video emerged of a schoolgirl telling a man that she was only 15 years old and that he needed to go away. This enraged the locals. It's not an isolated incident that. There have been other issues, whether it's to do with Altrincham in Greater Manchester or in Northamptonshire, where there have been accusations that men from the local asylum seeker hotel have been harassing young women and girls. It's a big problem. It causes tension. Another problem that causes tension when it comes to migrant hotels is when we plonk them in very rural parts of Britain. So whether it's parts of Wales, whether it's parts of the Lake District, for example, or whether it's just other parts of the British countryside, where there might only already be a small local population with one hotel that's normally there to service the tourists that come to look at the beautiful British countryside and then dine at local pubs and restaurants and shop in the local post office, etc. You catch my drift. Well, if all of a sudden that hotel closes and instead it is used to house 300-400 men from the Middle East, it obviously radically changes the area, doesn't it? And people, unsurprisingly, can have a problem with that. Even legal migration routes have their flaws, though. The skilled worker visa programme was introduced post-Brexit to address labour shortages, but it's faced loads of criticism because it's wide open for exploitation. For instance, some sponsors have been accused of misusing visas for profit rather than addressing genuine labour needs. We have also seen huge numbers of people come over on a student or a low-skilled worker visa and then overstay and then try to claim asylum as a result. So basically, people see it as a ticket into Britain permanently. The National Audit Office recently highlighted weaknesses in this very system, including rushed decisions, limited enforcement. They leave both businesses and migrants vulnerable. So, what are our leaders doing about this? Well, Rishi Sunak's Stop the Boats campaign was heavily promoted, but obviously didn't deliver any significant results. He's since gone on to say that he got his messaging wrong. He wished he hadn't actually said stop the boats. I think most people wish he just had stopped the boats. But Starmer has called for more humane policies, but has yet to outline a real serious comprehensive plan to tackle illegal immigration or reform for the asylum processes. And indeed, given the fact that we've seen record numbers of people cross the English Channel so far this year and a 500% increase in the asylum seeker claims appeals backlog, it would imply that illegal immigrants are not taking him particularly seriously. In fact, just this week, video footage emerged from within a migrant hotel of a group of Albanian men on TikTok advertising how cheap and how easy their route to Britain was. They said it has, quote, 100% success. And for just £3,000, which you can pay on arrival, you can get into Britain. Does that look to you like a cohort of people who are quaking in their boots about our new Prime Minister's policies? No, I don't think it really does. The UK needs strong leadership and practical solutions to fix this immigration debacle. As well as the need to tighten the oversight of the visa programmes to prevent exploitation, we also need to address genuine labour shortages, and that's going to require some uncomfortable conversations. There are solutions out there. For example, why do we make people who are training to be nurses or midwives take out a student loan and go to university? Could we not incentivise them financially to go and do that? Ergo, encouraging more British nationals to go into those professions and in the care sector so that we don't have to continually be seen to outsource that to parts of Africa, the Middle East and India. That might be a logical solution. Immigration is a complex issue. It requires nuanced solutions, not just rhetoric and quick fixes, but Britain deserves policies that balance compassion with control, protecting those who genuinely need refuge whilst maintaining public trust in the system. And just on that final point about those who genuinely need refuge, when the war in Ukraine kicked off and we had the Ukrainian refugee scheme, I think most people were absolutely fine with that on two counts. Firstly, we could physically see that there was a war taking place. And secondly, it was almost entirely women and children. And there is a view there that those women and children are going to try to go back home to their home country as and when everything calms down, and hopefully at some point soon that does. So people were very accepting of that. But when you see boatloads of, and let's be honest, it's mostly men, coming across the English Channel, throwing their documents in the channel so we don't know who they are, claiming to flee war and persecution when in reality there's no way that all of them are, that fills up space for genuine refugees and asylum seekers. And it means that people who actually need our help simply can't get it because we've got too many people willing to just try to break into Britain illegally. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Patrick Christys. Please don't forget to subscribe to GB News on YouTube for more insights into today's most pressing issues.